It's a dark and stormy night. All night you've been hearing the sound of rain, wind, thunder, and lightning. But you hear something, a loud crash that's none of those things. You get up out of bed and look over at the front door. The door has been kicked open. A dark figure says something you don't understand. He's holding a machete. Your wife's standing behind you looking for protection. You reach down and grab a fly swatter. No, wait, that's not right. You grab a cell phone so you can call and wait 15, 45 minutes for somebody with a tin star to show up and help you. Maybe not your best option. You reach over and grab a firearm. Yeah, there you go. That's a good choice. But which firearm? That's what we're going to talk about today for home defense guns. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting, guns, ammo, tactics, the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. First and foremost, I am a Christian, a servant of God, and a follower of Jesus Christ. God has blessed me to do many things in my life, for I could do nothing apart from Him. U.S. Marine Corps combat veteran, did a couple of tours in Iraq. As an assaultman after my combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. Also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also did several years in law enforcement, LAPD. I worked regular assignments and more specialized assignments. Been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency. That's all I'll say about that. Been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion. And West Coast Regional Rifle Champion. Won more shooting competitions with the talent that God's given me than I can actually remember. Was blessed to be the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. Our primary job, the reason we primarily existed, was to stop active shooters. I got the opportunity to head up and be the commander of that team. I grew up around guns, hunting and shooting and competing at a very early age. Been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country, from whitetail on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast, and bear and elk and all manner of things. I've even been a professional big game hunter and guide. But again, most importantly, I'm a Christian. And I am your host, Michael Milito. Welcome to Gunfighter Life. I've covered home defense guns, and by God's grace, the podcast is growing and bearing fruit all the time. I'm very humbled and thankful for that, first and foremost to God, and then all the patrons that step up and support. And hopefully the podcast is getting better. So I think it's time to revisit this topic of home defense guns. Now, I probably don't need to justify home defense guns to this audience, but I'm going to do a brief, just a real brief statement here. And go and check this for yourself. Numbers vary, but in the numbers I've seen, there is vastly more burglaries, home invasions, those type of crimes in the U.S. every year than there are house fires. By a large margin, not like within the margin of error. There's a lot more. Nobody would call you probably anything but prudent for having a fire extinguisher in your house. Why then would you not have a home defense gun in your house? Also, from the Word of God, if a man is caught breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. Exodus 22. Now let me start off by making a subsection of the listenership angry or disagreeable, and that's okay. You don't have to agree with me. I'm not right on everything. But by God's grace, He's blessed me to be a professional gunfighter for the majority of my adult life, and hopefully that's one reason you come here that sets this podcast apart from real-world first-hand experience. I'm going to give you my take on this. You can take it or leave it. But I'm going to say perhaps the worst choice is a handgun. And I know There goes the dissension right there. But hear me out. Handguns are inherently less effective. The reason handguns exist is not because they're better. The reason handguns exist is because they're convenient. They're able to be carried. I have a handgun on me right now. I have a handgun on me when I go to the gym or when I go to Walmart or when I was just out in the yard playing with the dog. I can have it with me all the time. It's convenient. It can be carried incognito, the point of concealed carry, right? It gives me the ability to project force and have a firearm when I otherwise would not be able to, because convenience or societal norms dictate that I can't. I probably, if I was in a state that didn't prohibit it, I might be able to go to Walmart with an AR-15 in my hands. But that wouldn't really be wise or prudent with societal norms, right? I have a handgun on me. But it's not because it's most effective, right? Let's concede that. No person that really understands ballistics and guns is a professional gunfighter. I said somebody is trying to kill you with an AK-47 right now. You can have a handgun, a rifle, or a shotgun. There might be quite a bit of debate between the rifle and the shotgun, but I don't know anybody that's going to pick a handgun. Why would you pick it for home defense in an environment that you have dominion over, where concealment is not really a thing? There may be a few reasons why you want to, and there are some advantages to the handgun that I will get to when I cover handguns. But I will say for this, I don't think they're the first or second choice. They are less effective. Handgun rounds are less effective than rifle or shotgun rounds, unless you go to the ridiculous extreme to prove your point, like saying, a 500 Smith & Wesson is more effective than a 410 shotgun round. Okay, I would concede that. But come on, you have to go to that far extreme to prove your point. There is no common handgun round, 9.40-45, that compares with the devastation and firepower of a 12-gauge shotgun loaded with buckshot, or with a 308 proper rifle round. So let's concede that. So now the debate becomes rifle or shotgun. I'm going to tell you I think it's a shotgun, unless there are some very extenuating circumstances. Home defense ranges, if you include your yard, probably within 50 yards, 100 yards, 150 yards, well within that distance. And if you have a decent shotgun with slugs, you should be able to hit a man-sized target at 150 yards with a slug. But the vast majority of home defense scenarios are way, way inside of that. And let's call it 0 to 50 yards, 75 feet, right, for most homes. Home defense scenarios, even if you include like the driveway. That is where the shotgun shines. It is an amazing CQB weapon. It is a really good close quarters weapon. The reason the Germans got mad at us for using them in trenches in World War I. There's a reason when I was a police officer and I had some more specialized roles and I had access to full auto CAR-15s, which I occasionally sometimes would use, or even literal Thompson submachine guns and all manner of full autos and carbines. If I was entering a house and I thought somebody in there might try and kill me, I took a 12-gauge shotgun loaded with buckshot and slugs, because I didn't care what was Instagram or what looked cool or what had a cool marking stamped on the side of it or what had the Gucciest camo pattern. Right? I cared what was going to keep me breathing when I got through. What was the best tool for that? And that's a shotgun. In most cases, there are outliers, but a shotgun. I'm going to tell you, 12 or 20 gauge, I would say start out with a 12 gauge. If you have a reason to go to 20, that's cool too. But a 12 gauge, most people will tell you double-aught buck. I'm going to dissent from that opinion again, and I'm going to say, especially here in home defense, number 4 buck. Not that there's anything wrong with double-aught buck, your standard loading, 8 or 9 pellets of double-aught buck. It's going to be 33 caliber. If you look at number 4 buck, standard loading, you're looking at 27 pellets. Those are going to be, I believe, 24 caliber. It is devastating. And that is my pick. You may decide you want to go double-aught. You may decide that you want to split the difference and go with number 1 buck, also a very good load. And if you decide double-aught, because that's just what most people use and it's easily available, it's certainly very useful and devastating. You need to pattern your shotgun. There's a lot of myths surrounding shotguns. You cannot just point in a general direction. You have to aim them. If you don't believe me, go take your shotgun out at common home defense distances and shoot at targets. You'll see a lot of times the pattern is the size of your fist or smaller. In fact, when I was LAPD, we trained to take hostage shots, not with our handgun, with our shotgun, with buckshot, because at reasonable ranges, it absolutely is easier to aim and devastating and very precise. The fact that we train that way with shotguns with buckshot is something about that you have to aim. The fact that you can take hostage shots with a 12 gauge shotgun, we learned that in the LAPD Police Academy. You absolutely have to aim them. They're not some kind of smart bomb where you just fire in the general direction and they find their target somehow. It's not how they work. You have to aim them. Patterns do open up, and they open up quite a bit at longer distances. But at common home defense distances, it's going to be a lot of times a big ragged hole, which is good because it's devastating on the intended target. Slugs also are devastating. I would say my go-to for home defense would be buckshot. I might have some slugs in the side saddle for special situations. Also, let me address what I'm going to call kind of garbage theory of birdshot for home defense, self-defense. And this comes again from real-world first-hand experience. I have been on the scene where grown men have been shot with birdshot at contact distance. And let me just say, I was less than impressed with the results. It's not the right tool for the job. Another example that I wasn't there for, but it's pretty well documented, and not to pick on any particular party, but Dick Cheney shot one of his friends in the face in a hunting accident. I was shortly thereafter out of the hospital. Maybe it'll work in a home defense scenario, maybe it won't, but is that really what you want to bank on? It might work. So you know a reasonable size squirt gun spray painted black might work to dissuade a home invader. But is that what you want to rely on? And not the right tool for the job. Buckshot. Here. Now, I'm going to recommend number 4 if you want to go double up, or number 1. They're all really good choices. Now, why might one go with a 20 gauge? Well, maybe it's what you have. You're already a hunter, upland game hunter or something. It'll work fine. Also, if it's for the family, it's for you, kids, wife, and you want a shotgun that the family can use and run. Lighter, less recoil. It's good. And let me tell you, although it's not as powerful as the 12 gauge, it is much more powerful than many other weapons. It is still plenty of power in the 20 gauge. If you're dropping down to the 20 gauge, I really recommend you not go with number or double aught buck. I really recommend number 4 buck or number 3 buck or something similar. You get a lot more pellets in that smaller gauge. Smaller gauge is still a big payload coming out of there. So you might decide for those reasons you want to go 20 gauge. Certainly devastating. Nothing wrong with it. Just a plain Jane youth model Mossberg 500 or Maverick 88 20 gauge is a good choice if you want to go down to the 20 gauge. On that, let's talk about platforms. I'm not so concerned about models, but a reasonable rate of fire, meaning pump or semi-auto. Pump or semi-auto, if you're looking for the economic choice, then it's going to be a pump. A good reliable pump is generally quite a bit cheaper than a good reliable semi-auto. You can get a dirt cheap semi-auto, but a lot of times they're not reliable. You can get a very cheap pump action that are very reliable. Some of the go-tos, again, Mossberg 500, Maverick 88. I can't in good conscience really recommend the Remington 870 anymore. The Winchester pump actions, they're not crazy expensive, and they're very reliable as far as a mechanical device can be. I do think semi-autos have a lot of merit in this situation. You can fire them one-handed, and although people say pump actions are super reliable, more reliable than semi-autos, that's if you don't put the human factor into that. I have seen in training, it's been documented in real-life cases, hopefully none that I've been a part of, but people either being nervous and pumping the shotgun when it's already loaded, dumping ammo on the ground, or not completely working that slide action, that pump action all the way back and all the way forward, thus inducing malfunctions. So although the mechanical mechanism is perfectly reliable, the human behind it under stress may not be. To eliminate that, going to a semi-auto. I'll tell you kind of my go-to not apocalypse shotgun, but defensive shotgun is a Benelli M2. They're not cheap. But pump or semi-auto, anything with a reasonable rate of fire. Real quick, double barrels are a thing. They're certainly twice as much reasonable rate of fire as a single barrel, single shot shotgun, but I think why would you go with one of them? They generally cost more than a pump action. So unless it's just what you already have, I would not recommend them. For this application, they're great for a lot of things, hunting, clay shooting, but for this, pump or semi-auto, if you're asking me. Now, let's look at the carbine. There's a lot of defensive carbines, but here in America, when you say America, or America, or however you want to say it, right? When you think fighting rifle, you generally think AR-15. Although it doesn't stand for America's Rifle or Assault Rifle, it stands for Armalite Rifle. It very well could stand for America's Rifle. It is very common here in America, and it's a good choice for this. I don't think as good as a shotgun. Most people that say this one is better than that would point to the fact that overpenetration is a thing. So let me discuss that right now. Overpenetration absolutely is a thing, but I would submit to you any projectile that can reliably stop a man is also going to easily overpenetrate, let's say, 2 pieces of drywall, which is common in a lot of American domiciles, houses. People that espouse this is why the AR is better, it doesn't overpenetrate as much. I would say, would you, or would you let anybody at all, even if I give you safety glasses, stand behind 2 pieces of drywall and let me shoot it, let's say, 3 times with an AR-15 with any kind of common defensive ammo? So you kind of, that's where I stand on that. I care about problem number 1. Problem number 1 is stopping the threat. Overpenetration is problem number 2. Let's solve problem number 1 before we worry about problem number 2. It is absolutely the case because you're dealing with smaller projectiles going at very, very high velocities. To give you an idea, not to get too nerdy, we're talking about the shotgun, talking about an average payload, whether it's number 4, double up, buck, slug, whatever. You're talking in general an ounce to an ounce and a quarter for your 12 gauge, going at about 1,300 feet a second. If you convert that to grains, you're talking over 500 grains. When you talk about the AR, you're talking the most common 55 grain, again, versus over 500 grains with the shotgun. You're talking about maybe over 3,000 feet a second. And because of that, when that hits a harder object, drywall, 2x4, it may lose its integrity and split into smaller pieces, which greatly decreases its ability to penetrate an object. May shatter and lose its integrity. May not. A lot of that depends on velocity, projectile construction, angle, twist rate of your rifling. A lot goes into that, so I certainly wouldn't bank on it. But it can penetrate less than a shotgun or even a less powerful handgun, largely because of those high velocities. Now, rifles have a lot of advantages of fighting carbine for a lot of situations. Much higher capacity, much longer range. Do either one of those really have any clear advantage here in home defense? No. But some other advantages. An AR-15 is going to have a lot less felt recoil. Right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I just talked about having over 500 grains of payload at 12, 13, 1,500 feet a second, 1,600 feet a second with the shotgun, 500 grains versus 55 grains at 3,000. These are just rough, really rough numbers, right? There's all kinds of different stuff you can shoot in different loads. But rough numbers, the AR-15 is going to have far less recoil, making it easier to shoot and shoot controllably and shoot consecutively, meaning shot after shot, and shot recovery times are going to be less. I don't care how good you control recoil, if you reduce it, you can control it better. So, that being said, that's some real advantage to the carbine. For example, my wife, her favorite long gun, she calls it the spanking rifle. It's an AR because when it runs out of ammo, she spanks the side of it. But it's a short-barreled AR. I guess it was an AR pistol. Now it's maybe going to be an SVR, and I got to decide what we're going to do with that, which is kind of sad because it's her kind of go-to defensive rifle, and who knows what's going to happen with that now. But that illustrates a point that it's easy to shoot and fun to shoot. She likes shooting it when we go to the range. The shotgun, not so much. let her have a platform, even if I think it's less effective, that she is comfortable shooting and can hit targets reliably with. Because that's kind of the point of shooting, right? To hit a target, to hit a given target. The point is not to miss and make noise. The point is to hit a given target. It's the point. That's hopefully the end result when you pull the trigger. If you're firing a live round, is to hit a given target. So the fact that it's easier to shoot, right, that's a good thing. So that's a real advantage. Less recoil, easier to shoot. And I'm talking felt recoil. They can often be very loud, especially inside a building, inside a small room. So there is that. But they certainly have less felt recoil. The capacity, I am all for you owning whatever size magazine you want. If you want to put a 100-round drum in your AR for home defense, you rock on. But how many rounds are you likely going to need in a home defense scenario? Maybe a few, maybe a dozen, maybe 20 if you've got several attackers. So there's a clear advantage there. I would say, on that note, let's talk about rounds for the carbine. This is not the place for green tip, my friends. Green tip is generally not what I would recommend for a fighting carbine in the first place. The military uses it. Okay. It doesn't make it what the best thing for you to use. I submit there are better rounds. 55 grain full metal jacket would not be my first, second, or third choice for this. It wouldn't be the worst choice if that's what you can afford, but there are better rounds. There are specifically designed defensive rounds for this that are designed to expand and expel their energy in the intended target to change that behavior that caused you to start shooting them in the first place. There are many, and I get no sponsors here, and hopefully that's what you appreciate about this show. If you appreciate the unbiased opinion from people giving me bribes and telling me to promote their brand of ammo or their load or their gun, you want an honest opinion, hopefully you'll consider supporting something like that and becoming a patron. Anyway, there are several loads for this, and I'm going to stick to the 5.56 because I think that's probably most common, or 2.23. There is a difference, but for this, Spear Gold Dot, trusted. They make a load. Winchester Ranger, just like in handguns, they also make a load for the 2.23. One of my favorites, Federal True Tactical Rifle Urban, also good. Here's the deal. Here's what's more important. Train with to make sure it feeds and functions out of your gun when fired by you, not when fired by some YouTuber on YouTube, targets on YouTube. When fired out of your carbine by you, is it reliable? Does it feed out of your gun? Is that what your gun is zeroed for? If you do have to make that hostage shot or that precision shot, he's poking their head around your, banister, whatever the shot presented is that gun zeroed with that ammo? And yeah, that ammo is expensive. Is this really a place to cut corners? You can do one of two things. You can just shoot this ammo and zero your rifle for this ammo, or you can try and find a binary solution. And this is generally what I do. I try and find, and I generally settle on 55 grain for this, but you could pick 62 or whatever. Find a good affordable practice load that shoots in the same place as my go-to defensive load. I may decide, as an example for me, doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You have to test it. At, Federal American Eagle 55 grain FMJ and Federal 55 grain Tactical Rifle Urban shooting the same point of aim, point of impact in my carbine, fired by me. And that's a good solution. I can go out and train with the 55 grain American Eagle, readily available, affordable, and I can load it up with a Tactical Rifle Urban. And that can be my go-to defensive load. Or you could decide something like Hornady Hollow Point Bow Tip Match is affordable enough that you can do both with it. And it's a good expanding round out of my carbine when fired by me. I've tested it. So those are some thoughts on ammo selection. Now, how should one configure one of these long guns for home defense? If you have already an AR set up and it's your one go-to AR and it has an LPVO, that's cool. For home defense, iron sights, red dot, that's cool. And whether it's a shotgun or an AR, a white light, and a sling. I think those are important. And a lot of, pretty much any martial application with a long gun, a white light and a sling, especially for home defense. Positive identification of target. But you know it's a bad guy that broke in the front door and not your kid who snuck out, got drunken, and broke the window accidentally. positive identification of target, white light here makes a lot of sense. And you might think, why a sling? I'm not going to war. Well, slings are important. You can drape the gun. You get injured and you need to put on a tourniquet. For instance, you still have positive control of the weapon. You go around a corner because one of your loved ones is screaming for help. Forget to bring the gun in close. The thing you should do when you go around a corner and somebody grabs your gun and now you're wrestling for it, it makes it less likely they're going to take your own gun from you and shoot you with it, because it's positively connected to you with a sling. But consider a sling and a white light important. Now, let us talk about handguns for home defense. If you've decided that's what you want, or that's what you have for home defense, how can we optimize it? Okay, well, I'm going to say first of all, unless you only own a small concealed carry handgun and that's what you have for now, there's no reason for a small handgun here. Larger handguns, all other things being equal, caliber, things like that, the larger handgun is going to be easier to shoot, both easier to aim and make hits with, almost always, and less felt recoil because the mass of that gun is going to absorb some of it. So a full-size fighting handgun, Beretta 92, Glock 17, M17, 320, right? A full-size handgun. 9mm is the de facto standard. I don't want to get into that debate on the show. If you decide you want a 45, that's fine. Just because the 9mm has gotten a lot more effective over the past 15 years with good bullet construction and technology doesn't mean the 45 has gotten less so. But a full-size fighting handgun. Are some advantages to the handgun I said I would mention when I got here. You can fire them one-handed, so if you're carrying a small child under one arm, or you're on the phone with 911, you can still be aimed in and or actually firing with one hand. It's easier to do that with a handgun. Not that you can't do it with a carbine or a shotgun. You can, but it's not really designed to be fired one-handed. The handgun is. That's a big advantage. Also, the fact you can have it on a holster, maybe have it concealed if you go and answer the door. It's an advantage. So, a full-size fighting handgun. I'm going to tell you, ammo designed for the intended target. Not full metal jacket, not NATO ball ammunition. And you pick you prefer 115, you prefer 124 plus P, you prefer 147. Get a good street-proven round that fires point of aim, point of impact with your sights out of your gun, that feeds when fired by you and expands out of your gun when fired by you, your barrel length, not what your local PD carries. That's kind of a cop-out. Pun not intended, but I guess relevant. Just because your local PD carries it doesn't make it the best ammo choice for you. Does it feed out? Do you carry the same gun that they carry? If you do, then maybe that is a good choice. But if you carry something different, there's no guarantee that ammo is going to work in your gun when fired by you, or that it shoots the same point of aim, point of impact, very important, that it expands out of your barrel length or your gun. Those are important. And those are criteria I would tell you to look at when choosing a defensive load. And again, go with a good street-proven load. Winchester Ranger T, Spear Gold Dot, or Spear G2, Hornady Critical Duty. Any of these rounds that are street-proven, one that confident, tested in your gun when fired by you. A full-size fighting handgun, you really don't have to worry too much about size constraints here. So you might think about an optic on this handgun, makes some sense. You also might think about mounting a light. A weapon mounted light here makes a lot of sense. Again, you're not really worried about concealing it. The size of the handgun shouldn't really be that much of an issue. And again, having a white light for positive identification of target can be a good thing. So I think it makes a lot of sense here. Now, a brief mention of pistol caliber carbines. Now, I think if you're going to move up to a long gun, I would move up to one of the ones we aforementioned. However, maybe that's what you have. Maybe that's what your family members like to shoot. PCCs are some of the most fun guns to shoot and easy to train and get hits on. If you like the shootability of, let's say, the AR platform or something like it, you want a PCC, you're going to get more power even if it's the same 9mm load out of the PCC because more of that powder is burned, giving you more velocity in almost all cases. So if you think the handgun is enough, then there's really no reason that the PCC wouldn't be. Same kind of configuration, white light and sling, as I mentioned on the other things. They're going to be quite a bit more shootable for a lot of people than a handgun. A handgun is the hardest gun to master, and it's the most perishable of skills. To train in general on a handgun quite a bit to stay proficient, more so than a shotgun or a rifle. So there's that. I know it was a lot. There's a lot on home defense guns, and I could do a whole episodes on just a home defense shotgun or just a home defense carbine. And perhaps I will. But hopefully this was a good overview to get you started. If you know somebody that's just kind of waking up to this, like that scene in The Matrix, right? Taking that pill and waking up to, oh, hey, maybe everything is not rosy, and they want to get into protecting their family. Maybe you want to share this episode. A good place. Those are some of my thoughts on home defense firearms. Tactical tip of the day. As much as we like to harp on guns and ballistics and ammo, and obviously I do, I have a podcast called Gunfighter Life, tactics are important. Think about you and or your family, those whom you have headship over, dominion over. You are called as a man to protect and provide for them. So think about this and discuss it with them beforehand without scaring them, doing it with some tact at the right time. Have a plan. A plan goes a long way. When you don't have to form on the fly when something happens. You have a house, a piece of property, depending on the layout. You might say, hey, little Johnny, if you hear a loud crash tonight, a loud noise, you come to mom and dad's room. Or depending on the layout of the house, that may be a horrible idea. You may say, little Johnny, if you hear a loud crash, front door, you hear screaming, then you stay where you are, mom and dad will come to your room. Or you may decide, we have a really good egress from our house and a decent sized piece of property. If something happens, here's the code word. If you hear this or hear shooting, then we all rendezvous. We have a rally point. Don't say rendezvous. Your little kids probably won't know what that means. Or how to spell it, because it's spelled like Rendezvous. Anyway, we're going to have a rally point. We're going to meet up at the treehouse that's, 2 acres away in the back of the property. Whatever you decide is the best course of action. And you may have several. You may decide if somebody breaks in the front door, if you hear screaming or whatever, mom and dad say the certain word, you do this. Or in scenario B, you do this. If you smell smoke, you do this, right? That's things that kids learn. Fire drills. This is just another form of that. Anyway, whether you have kids or not really the point. Have a plan beforehand so that you have less to try and think about. Gunfighting, urban warfare, I've said before, is kind of a thinking man's game. It can be hard to think, especially when you're getting shot at. So having that predetermined plan can really help. That's your tactical tip of the day. Have a plan. Here's a verse that came out today in our group chat. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows us his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out throughout all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun. Especially in modern life, where we might go from a house to a cubicle and a tiny little mobile box. It is healthy and good to step back sometimes and look at the magnitude of a sunset or a mountain range and just think that's but a very small part of God's creation. And remember the magnitude and power of God. And that can oftentimes make our problems seem much smaller. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows us his handiwork. Psalm 19. Thanks, men, and have a blessed day.